Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, we will pick up from exactly where we left off. That is, in the last video, we did translation, and in this video, we will do enlargement. Now, enlargement is the only translation in our transformation in our syllabus in which the size of the image changes. So the other three transformations that we did, reflection, rotation, translation, are called isometric transformations. Okay, and this is called a non-isometric. Okay, that means the size of the image changes in this particular transformation. Okay, so let's get to work. So the word itself kind of gives it away what this is about. Enlargement, that means, now what you might think that in enlargement the image, that means actually increasing the size of the image, but that's not always the case. Yes, that's what happens most of the time, but in some cases the size of the image actually gets smaller. Okay, and that is like saying that the image is diminished. When does that happen? How do we do that? Obviously, that's something we're going to look into one by one. But before that, with every transformation, there are a couple of things that you guys need to know. And with this also, this is no exception. So the one thing that you need to know is what it's defined by. Okay, now enlargement is defined by two things. Number one is the center of enlargement. All right, so that's the one thing that we need to know before we can actually enlarge any object. And the other is the scale factor. Okay. Now, you can probably see what the scale factor is. You can probably see what the center of enlargement is over here. Okay. This is basically the point where if you join the image and the object and you extend it, the point where they all meet is the center of enlargement. Now, we'll do this where we formally learn how to find the center of enlargement, just like how we learned how to find the center of rotation, how to find the line of reflection, so on and so forth. But just to give you an overview, this is what it looks like. Okay. Now, scale factor is something that's very important, and scale factor is basically the ratio of the image length over the object's length. Okay, and it's not just that, it's not just this ratio that's equal to the scale factor. There's something else also, and that is the distance of image from the center. Please excuse my horrible handwriting over here, and divided by the distance, I'm sure you guessed it, distance of the object from the center. Now, when do we use what? That's something, obviously, I'll help you out with, nothing to worry about. Okay, now, in this video, we are going to further see what is the effect of when you enlarge a triangle with a positive scale factor, number one, and the center is origin. Okay, so when the center is origin, things are pretty easy. They're pretty standard. Okay, and that's the only thing that we're going to cover in this video. And if time allows, and in this video only, we will cover what happens if the scale factor is negative. Okay, but I think I'll probably end this video after the positive scale factor. Anyway, so let's see what it says. So it says enlarge triangle ABC with center origin and scale factor. So in the first part, it's 2, and in the second part, it's half. So the first part, I'll color code it. I'll do it with red color. Okay, now the way this works is, you know what your center is. Okay, so just so that it's prominent, I'll make an X at the very center. Okay, and what I'll do is I'll one by one count the distance of the object from the center in terms of left and right, up and down. Okay, or horizontal or vertical distance. So if you look at A here, A is basically 2 units to the right and 2 units up. Okay, so from the center, A is 2 units right and 2 units up. So when you enlarge this by scale factor 2, what happens is that you actually end up doubling this distance. Okay, what does that mean? That means A prime, which is the image, will actually be 4 units to the right and 4 units up. So where do we find A? We find it over here. And if you look at it closely, you might already have guessed what the shortcut is, and the shortcut is that you don't really need to do all the hard work, because if you look at the coordinates of A, there are 2, 2, and then if you look at the coordinates of A prime, you'll notice that they're 4, 4. Okay, now that's no coincidence. They're actually just multiplied by the scale factor here. Okay, so the scale factor is 2. What happens if you multiply the coordinates by 2? What you get is the coordinates of the image, 4, 4. And that's pretty much all we need to do over here. Okay, so if I take the coordinates of B, now you can apply the same method here also. It's 6 units to the right and 2 units up. Now you can double this distance, in which case it's going to be 12 units to the right, and instead of 2, it's actually going to be 4 units up. And let's see, where does that take you? That takes you to 12,4. And again, it's no coincidence that B has coordinates 6, 2, and after you enlarge it with scale factor 2, center origin, what you end up with is actually 12,4. So this is where A prime is, and this is where B prime is. Now, if let's say I want to do the same thing for C. So what are the coordinates of C? The coordinates of C are 6, 4, and I think we can do this mentally. So 6 times 2 is 12, and 4 times 2 is 8. So 12, 8. That means this is where we are, and there you go. That's C prime. So now we're going to join these 3 points with the help of a straight line, and there you go. That's it. And there's one more thing that I want you to observe is that since the scale factor was 2, that means every length should have doubled. Okay, so AB, which was the base of the image, is how many units? It's 1, 2, 3, 4. It's 4 units, and now it should be 8 units. Let's see if that's the case. So A starts at 4, and this line starts at 4, ends at 12, and you can see that it's actually equal to 8. And let's see, what about the height? The height was 2 units. The height of the image now is 4 units. Okay, now keeping that in mind, think to yourself, what would happen if the scale factor is half? Okay, think about it. So yes, we are asked to enlarge, but what will happen to the image is that it'll actually get smaller, okay? Or in other words, it'll get diminished. So I'm going to do this with a different color. I'm going to do this with the color green, okay? And we'll do it first the same method. We'll apply the same method. We'll look at the distance, and then we'll multiply the distance, and then we'll see what the shortcut is. So if you look at the distance of A from the center, it's 2 units to the right, it's 2 units up, okay? So nothing has changed except the scale factor. So A has coordinates 2, 2, okay? And the distance is 2 units to the right and 2 units up. If I multiply that by half, so half of 2 is 1, so that means the image of A prime, is going to be 1 unit to the right and 1 unit up. So that's over here. So if you compare the two, you'll realize that it's actually no coincidence that A from 2, 2 has turned to 1, 1. It's because the scale factor is 0.5 or half, and when you multiply the coordinates of the object by the scale factor, what you get is the coordinates of the image, so 1, 1. And we're going to do the exact same thing for B and C also. So B has coordinates 6, 2. If I multiply, let's write that down over here. If I multiply that by 0.5, so that means the coordinates of the image should be 3 and 1. Let's see if there you go. That's where 3 and 1 is. And let's see where C is going to be. So C has coordinates 6, 4. And if you multiply that by 0.5, let's see what happens. So C prime is going to have coordinates 3, 2. So 3, 2 is going to be somewhere over here. Now it has gotten really small, but the idea is that when the scale factor is in between 0 and 1, the image gets smaller. Okay, so I want you to take these mental notes that if the center is origin, we can simply multiply the coordinates of the object by the scale factor in order to get the coordinates of the image. Number 1, mental note number 1. Mental note number 2 is that when the scale factor is in between 0 and 1, the image gets smaller. Okay, and we'll formally write this down, don't worry about it. Now let's look into what happens when the scale factor is negative. Okay, let's cover that in this video also. So when the scale factor is negative, things are pretty straightforward, even given that the center is origin. Okay, if the center is not origin, things can get a bit tricky. Okay, but there's one important thing that I still want you to understand, and that is that what really happens when the scale factor is negative. Yes, the image in some case will be smaller, and in some case it will be larger. Okay, but like, what is the impact of the negative sign? So if you look at, let me first mark the center. So this right here is the center. Okay, now if you look at A, you can see that A is 2 units to the right. It's still 2 units to the right, and it's 2 units up. Okay, now we're going to double this distance. Okay, there's no doubt about that, because you can see that the value here is 2. But because of the minus sign, what will happen is that the image is no more going to be 4 units to the right. In fact, it's going to be 4 units to the left. And it's also no more going to be 2 units up. It's going to be 4 units, but 4 units down. So that means A prime is actually going to be at -4, -4. So let's mark that over here, and there you go. That's A prime. Okay, now let's write down the coordinates of A, 2, 2. Now what happened to A prime? It turned out to be -4, -4. And again, it's no coincidence. It's because that the scale factor was -2. That is why the coordinates of A prime has actually been -4, and -4. Okay, so there you go. Just like that, we're going to find out the coordinates of B. So B has coordinates 6, 2. If you multiply these coordinates by -2, you get -12 and -4. So let's mark that. -12 and -4 is right over here. Here's B prime. C has coordinates 6, 4. If you multiply that by -2, so you get -12 and -8. And there you go. That's where C prime is. And now we're going to join these 3 points with the help of a straight line. And there you go. That's it. We're done with part 1. Now for part 2, now before we move on to part 2, I want you to make an observation over here. The observation is that not only did the image get enlarged, okay, not only is the image larger than the object, it's actually 180 degrees rotated about the center. Okay, so that's another mental note, that when the scale factor is negative, the image, the enlarged or the diminished image, is 180 degrees rotated about the center. Or another way of remembering it is that it's actually on the opposite side of the center. Okay, so you can see that A is over here. You can say northeast, and A prime is over here. What is this? North, east, southwest. Okay. So yeah, that's another mental note for you guys. Okay, now let's do part 2 where the scale factor is -12. So we're gonna do it the exact same way, except that this time I will actually write down the coordinates of the image one by one. So A has coordinates 2, 2. Now let's do it the conventional way, 2 units to the right and 2 units up. So first we half the distance, so that's going to be 1 and 1, and then we change the direction. So it's no more going to be 1 unit to the right, it's going to be 1 unit to the left, and it's no more going to be 1 unit up. In fact, it's going to be 1 unit down. So there you go. This is where we are. This is where A prime is. And if you multiply the coordinates of A by -0.5, what you get is -1 and -1. And let's do the same for B. So B has coordinates 6, 2. What happens if you multiply this by -0.5? You get -3 and -1. So -3 and -1 is going to be over here. Let's look at the coordinates of C. They are 6, 4. What happens if you multiply them by -0.5? So C prime turns out to be at -3 and -2. Yep, -3 and -2. There you go. So here's B prime, here's C prime. Now we join them with the help of a straight line, and we get ourselves a nice and shiny triangle. And there you go. That's the answer to part 2. So that's it. That's pretty much all I wanted to cover in this video. Okay, so we've learned 2 things. We've learned what happens when the scale factor is positive. We've learned what happens when the scale factor is negative. Okay, and actually 3 things. We've also learned what happens, or what shortcut we can use when the center is origin. Now I know what you're probably thinking. You're probably thinking, what if the center is not origin? So don't worry about that. That is something I'll explain in the next video. So I'll see you then. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.